You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. Today we're talking with that liveliest of Congresswomen, Representative Carolyn B. Maloney of New York, about her 15-year struggle for a Women's History Museum in the Capitol. Thanksgiving Day is looming, and so we'll also, as we tend to do at this time of the year, intentionally focus on the native nations of the Americas, today through the work on violence against women being done by Sarah Deer. Last, we'll speak with Elizabeth Sackler, the first woman ever to be named as chair of the Board of Trustees of that great world-class Brooklyn Museum. And we'll talk about that and also her Sackler Wing for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn and her long-term activism on behalf of reclamation of native art back to the tribes that consider it sacred, who consider it spiritually crucial as holy objects more than as art. And we'll close with excerpts from the Constitution of the Iroquois Confederacy, on which Jefferson and Madison modeled the Constitution of the United States. But first, we need to look inside the headlines. The major headlines this past week all seemed to have something in common with each other that I couldn't quite put my finger on, and then I located it. Denial. There was the brutal murder in the noble sanctuary, as the Muslims call it, the Temple Mount, as the Jews call it. You'd think that if a spot was holy to two different groups of people, that would be a bond between them, but no, instead it's a source for bloodletting. Both the killers and the victims, who bond as well in their attitudes about women, were in denial of that similarity, in denial of the bond of worshiping in the same place, in denial of their attitudes toward women that bond them, in denial of half of humanity. It winds up inevitably that you're in denial of each other, and you're in denial of yourselves. And I thought, the fear is not of difference, as we always think, oh, that's the other. No, the fear is not of difference. The fear is of the same. The fear is that the other is not different. It's us. And then what? And then there was the headline on immigration. Why would you fear people whom you entrust to wash your clothes, to tend your lawns, to clean your house, to raise your children? What is the fear that they can do to you other than be like you? So consequently, you deny families the right to be together. You deny people the right of immigration to a country built on the blood and sweat and dreams and successes of immigrants. Denial. And then there was the storm. And all 50 states are at almost or at freezing temperatures, including Hawaii. And yet there are people who walk around saying, no, there's no real climate change, or if there is, it's in the natural cycle. Humans had nothing to do with it. We're not responsible. It has nothing to do with us. It's not the same as if we made it happen, except we have. And I thought, wow, it's true. Denial is perhaps the original sin. Denial, at any event, is not just a river in Egypt. And now it's time for our first guest. Congresswoman Carolyn B. Maloney is the representative for New York State's 12th Congressional District. She is a Democrat. She is a feminist. She sits on the House Committees for Financial Services, for Oversight and Government Reform, and on the Joint Committee for Economics. and she is a member, wow is she ever, of the House Caucus on Women's Issues. Carolyn Maloney. Carolyn, welcome to the program.
Oh, I'm thrilled to be on your program, Robin, and thank you for everything you've done to stand up for women.
Oh, well, right back at you, Representative, Congresswoman. It was so lovely to see you at the Women's Media Center Gala Awards. You looked fabulous, and it was a good night, wasn't it?
It was feminist heaven, as you said, and to be there with so many incredible trailblazers and leaders.
You are, of course, a congresswoman from New York City, as a matter of fact. Not my congressional representative, alas, although Jerry Nadler is a pretty fine one.
He's a great.
Yeah, he's terrific. You are now doing something on a national level for women that is quite sobering and important, and you've had a very uphill battle for it. It's your bill to establish a National Women's History Museum, and you'd think that that's a no-brainer. Everybody would say, yeah, the bill doesn't cost anything. I mean, it has no significant impact on federal spending. What's not to love? And yet there's been a lot of resistance. So tell us about it.
It's been an incredible journey. I've had this bill in for well over 15 years, and it really is a bipartisan initiative that would basically justly honor the vital role of women in our history and inspire a new generation of leaders by creating on or near the mall a National History Women's Museum. There are many museums, but I call them sliver museums. In Washington, we have a museum for women artists. We have part of the Smithsonian has the outfits that the women wear the day their husbands are sworn into office. We have Seneca Falls upstate honoring the three women that began the women's rights movement in our country, Lucretia Mott, Susan B. Anthony, and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, but none that really focuses on the many vast contributions of women in all types of areas. And when you walk around the mall, they have museums for stamps. They have it for law and order, for all kinds of ethnic groups, but not for half the population. So my bill 863 would do that. It passed the House overwhelmingly, 383 to 33, which was really great. And then it went to the Senate. All the 20 women senators are supporting it. Leader Reid and Leader McConnell support it. So everyone supports it, but due to the arcane rules of the Senate, 2 senators are holding it up. So if any of your visitors or listeners know them, please reach out to them in their states. One is Coburn from Oklahoma, and the other is Lee from Utah.
That's Mike Lee of Utah and Tom Coburn of Oklahoma. So if any of your listeners are in those states or from them or know people who are, reach out and put a little pressure.
And I worked very hard with Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee, getting it through the House. Senator Susan Collins and Senator Barbara Murkowski are outstanding champions with a track record of getting bipartisan bills done, and they are leading the effort in the Senate. And I'm just hoping to get it through. And I just want to point out that women's history is largely missing from textbooks, memorials, museum exhibits, and many other venues. Of the 210 statutes in the United States Capitol, only 13 are female leaders, and less than 5% of the 2,400 National Historic Landmarks chronicle women's achievements. And according to a survey of 18 history books, only 10% were dedicated, only 10% of the content was dedicated to the efforts of women. So women have done a great deal. They've helped build this great city and this great country and state, and certainly been a great part of our country, and I think they're entitled to one museum. Yeah. And it doesn't cost any money, Robin. It expressly was written in several ways that this will cost no money, creates a commission, which is how museums are created in Washington, and it would be appointed evenly from the leadership of the House and the Senate, and it's just, I don't see any negative downside for it, and I am really upset about it.
All it seems to do, the bill, is to authorize the commission to raise private money to cover its cost.
Got it.
And a 501c3 organization that is a nonprofit is already named National Women's History Museum, is already raising the funds necessary to pay for the commission. So it's going to the prom with its own mad money in its own little purse. I don't understand what the resistance is to, affirming women's place in history. We always say at the Women's Media Center we're trying to make women visible and powerful in media, and this is a way of making women visible in the history of this country.
I can't think of a better way to inspire both young men and women, except by the stories of these outstanding women. A vital part of achieving equal rights for women is acknowledging and commemorating the deep and lasting contributions women have made throughout history.
Well, and we know that women were behind the first prison reform movements, the first halfway houses, the first, you name it, and women have been there unacknowledged doing the scut work. Carolyn, how will this and everything else be affected now that we're in post-election, how shall I put it, torpor, hope, depression, agony, fury, and other things?
Well, it's we need to. Your show is going to help put it on the agenda. We're going to have what we call a lame duck session, which will be roughly 4 weeks. We're going in on the 12th of November. We'll basically be dismissed around the 15th of December, and so critical things will pass. I think a museum for half the population is long overdue and something that both sides should bring up. What we need is for these two senators to remove their hold. According to the Senate rules, any senator can put a hold on it. And if anyone can solve the mystery of why they're opposed to it, they keep saying that somehow in the future, somewhere, it might cost a dime. I think that's a very unfair. If that had happened, this country never would have passed anything.
Yeah.
And here we've written in there, we will pay for it. We will. All the other museums, incidentally, have been built with federal money, but this one is not asking for federal money. We're saying we'll do it on our own. And I just feel like it's Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers all over again. He was paid more, which he said she had to do everything in high heels and backwards. And
that's right. She did the same steps, but backwards and in high heels. Damn right.
And yet I feel the same way with this museum. We're doing everything, trying so hard. We have raised $12 million for this effort. We have no site. We have nothing. Yet we've already, with the generosity of women and like-minded men across this country, already raised that. But our stories need to be told. And, Robin, when I look at the effort of government to raise awareness about women's contributions to science and technology and math, the whole STEM effort to get more women in it,
right,
what better way than to have a museum that really highlights their achievements in these areas?
Well, it sure helps to see it in order to be it, because the little girls little girls are going to walk through that museum and say, I can be that, I can do that. There is bipartisan support for it now. It's just these two guys from Utah and Oklahoma that are standing in the way.
Right, exactly. We passed it overwhelmingly in the House, and then we have bipartisan leadership, and all the Republican and Democratic women are on it. Even Ted Cruz has come out for it. Rubio has come out for it. So the conservatives have come out for it. And yet I'm just afraid it's not going to pass because of the holds these two individuals have on it.
And their brothers on that side of the aisle can't put pressure on them, and their sisters can't put pressure. I guess it's been tried. The mysteries.
The best way is to have their constituents say this is crazy.
Yes, of course.
We have the Zadroga Reauthorization Act. That's the 9/11 Health and Compensation Bill that would provide health care to the heroes and heroines that risk their lives to save others. That's a bill that I'm proud to have authored, but that will need to be reauthorized, not just in this particular session, but in the coming years.
And I know also that you are the original force behind resurrecting the Equal Rights Amendment. And we're going to be having Jessica Neuwirth, who just recently wrote a fine book about it, on the program to talk about that campaign.
Well, I am totally for the Equal Rights Amendment. I have personally gone out and gotten many, many co-sponsors, well over 180 co-sponsors. But I know the reality. If you cannot even pass a women's museum that costs nothing, then there is no hope for passing the Equal Rights Amendment.
Oh, well.
So I feel that all of these issues are interrelated, and they're all part of strengthening each other. And when they try to roll back Title IX, equality of treatment in education and sports, which they've tried to do, and we've stopped them, or when they try to roll back Title VII, that equality of treatment in employment, but we're still 77 cents to the dollar. 30 years we've been stuck at 77 cents to the dollar.
Some days I can't believe we're still fighting for equal pay. It boggles the mind. Listen.
Well, when you look at this, Robin, that you can't even pass a women's museum that costs not one federal cent, that only tells a positive story about half the population.
That's ridiculous.
What does that tell you?
Remember that it's Mike Lee of Utah and Tom Coburn of Oklahoma, both, unfortunately, senators of the United States, who need to hear from you, listeners, about the National Women's History Museum. And it wouldn't hurt to drop a line to Representative Carolyn B. Maloney and thank her for the 15 years she has been laboring in the vineyards on this one project alone. Bless you for everything you do for women and other living things, Carolyn. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center.
Listen, every president had a mother, right?
You think?
And every person had a mother, and we should give mothers a Mother's Day present and let them have their own museum, right?
Right. You got it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Robin, for everything you do. It's a thrill to talk to you.
We have to take a short break here on Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'll be back in just a minute with a woman who is bent on getting justice for Native American women who are disproportionately the victims of violence. And she's going to get that justice whether it's from Native courts or national courts, and she won't be stopped.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome back. My next guest is Sarah Deer, who is a recent winner of the MacArthur Award, sometimes called the Genius Award. She's a legal scholar and an advocate who uses her understanding of tribal and federal law to develop policies and legislation that empower tribal nations to protect Native women from the enormous problem of sexual and domestic violence. She was a victim advocacy legal specialist and a staff attorney at the Tribal Law and Policy Institute from 2002 to 2008, prior to joining the faculty of William Mitchell College of Law in 2009, where she is currently a professor and co-director of the Indian Law Clinic. Sarah Deer. Sarah, welcome to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, congratulations on winning the MacArthur grant. This is so deserved. It's not for nothing is it called, nicknamed the Genius Award, and you do deserve it.
I'm part of a huge community that deserves it, really.
Well, you have done such extraordinary work, deep work in Native communities. You yourself are Muskogee Nation, and we know the audience of this program is very feminist and quite politically sophisticated, so they know that Native women, particularly those on reservations, suffer one of the highest per capita rates of violent crime in the world. But there's been a situation because of limited jurisdictional powers and also a lack of resources. There's also been limitations on sentencing authority, so tribal courts often can't prosecute these crimes, but federal prosecutors often don't take them on either, so the women fall between the cracks, and that's where you've come in.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're a bridge, aren't you? I mean, you on the one hand, you documented in academic research the facts and the historical underpinnings of the failure to protect the victims and survivors in Indian country, and you also work with grassroots organizations. So you translate between the two, don't you?
I try to. You know, I wasn't always sort of planning on being in academia. It's a route that sort of naturally came to me, but it wasn't part of a long-range plan. So it's sort of grounded in activism and grounded in women's rights. Went to law school to sort of effectuate some of that interest, and ended up in academia, but my roots are in activism. So I try to be mindful of that. I don't want to be the kind of academic that doesn't connect with the real world.
You also mediated between sectors inside the Native community, sectors who might disagree on whether there is a role at all for the U.S. legal system on reservations, and if so, how to effectively respond to violence against women. And you reframed the issue of sexual violence in Indian country as an international human rights issue. That was huge. Talk a little about that.
Well, the United States is known, I think, especially in the last 20 or 30 years, as really critiquing foreign governments in terms of their treatment of people. And yet the United States has, a lot of, responsibility for what's happened to Native people. And so Amnesty International approached my organization where I formerly worked, the Tribal Law and Policy Institute, and we're interested in exploring this issue as a human rights issue. And it was Andrea Smith who did, I think, a fellowship with Amnesty, and she was the one who sort of brought it to their attention. And then Amnesty came to my organization and said, tell us more, what can we do, how can we frame this? And that's sort of how it happened. It was, Amnesty sort of initiated it, but then partnered with tribal organizations and Native women to write the report, research the report, and then take action. What's been the reaction?
Well,
it was so swift. It's almost inconceivable to me how fast things changed.
Wow.
So we did a conference at the National Press Club in I think it was April of 2007 when the report was released. And I was getting back. I was very ill at the time. I was going through chemotherapy, and I probably wasn't even supposed to be on a plane, but I really wanted to be there. So, but I was on the plane that same day, and I was putting my putting my bag in the overhead bin, and my cell phone rang, and I thought, why is somebody calling me right now? And I answered, and it was Amnesty saying that, we already had calls from the Hill.
Wow.
So it was immediate. Now, anytime you engage with federal reform, it's going to take years.
Yes, of course.
But the Amnesty report, I didn't expect that. I expected more people to be educated, but I didn't expect the federal government to respond so quickly.
Yes, I would have been surprised as well. That's very interesting to embarrass them abroad, internationally, I think is what made the difference.
I do too, and I think there were people on the Hill that were interested in moving reform forward, but they didn't have a hook. They didn't have a way to engage with other folks on the Hill, and so this was sort of, they were waiting for something like this so that they could start the process.
Fantastic.
And so it was super fast.
That's wonderful. And tell me then also on the tribal council side, which, according to the late, great Wilma Mankiller, who herself was a paramount chief, is often men. When Sonny Clifford was on the program, she's Lakota, she spoke of resistance by tribal elders who were male to prosecution and to any federal prosecution of any sort. But she felt that the tribal councils were not prosecuting the way that they should either, being largely men. What is that situation like?
Well, this is where it gets very dicey and complicated, because the history of federal law enforcement on Indian reservations has not been a good one.
Not good.
And not good.
Not good.
And there's over-incarceration of Native men, criminalization of people of color, and so you're saying to the federal government, you're not doing your job in protecting women. You're sort of saying, come and prosecute more. I mean, that's what the message was.
So of course there's resistance.
Exactly. And there's the reality that patriarchy exists.
Of course.
In tribal councils. I mean, it's really taken a sinister hold in some communities. And it is a Western invention. It's patriarchy was not a common form of society or government prior to colonization. And so you've got a European construct of male leadership in a very complicated contemporary setting, and it can be very difficult to navigate.
No, and you work that front as well. You're busy on many fronts. You were instrumental in two pieces of landmark legislation: the Tribal Law and Order Act of 2010 that increases the sentencing. That one increases the sentencing power of tribal courts. And also in the reauthorization of Violence Against Women Act, that you restored some of the authority that was stripped from tribal governments by Oliphant versus Suquamish. And so that one gave tribal courts the power to prosecute non-Native Americans who assault Native spouses or partners. So
right.
that must go down well then with the various nations.
Well, I think it's a big improvement in terms of these men who were were committing acts of assault with impunity.
Yeah.
It doesn't go far enough, and a lot of people ask me, why was it limited to domestic violence? Why not other crimes? Why not all crimes? And, Oliphant was wrongly decided. So why are we sort of taking these baby steps? And I agree that it should not be limited to domestic violence, but what I had to come to understand, and again, this was through conversations with other activists and advocates throughout Indian country, is that, if we can get something through, then that is a victory.
Of course, you have to start somewhere.
Right, and so we wanted sexual assault and child abuse and domestic violence and all of that to be included, but somehow politically, it really had to narrow down. We had to convince the skeptical congressmen that these were men who married or dated or had babies within the community, who were part of the community, and were not being held accountable. And somehow that was more, of a sell than crimes in general.
One last question, which maybe it's unfair to ask you because you're already doing so much, but the data that has come to light recently about Native women being highly victimized in trafficking.
Yes.
In particular from Minnesota, Winnipeg, or that whole area, and horrendous stories coming out, some of which we've been able to cover on this program. Is that anything that you're working on, or Tribal Law and Policy Institute or the Indian Law Clinic is working on?
We're in the early stages. I mean, one of the things you have to do before you can make social change is to document the social problems.
Yeah.
And so I've worked with the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition to try to document this very invisible but yet very sinister experience of many Native women and girls being trafficked.
Yeah.
Domestically, internationally,
Exactly.
and it really is an emerging issue. Although in one of my articles I argue that it's always been going on. It's not just that we noticed it recently.
Probably, yes, yeah. That's right. And with children too, as well.
Exactly.
But you're on the case. Again, congratulations on the MacArthur. Well deserved. And please keep doing the brilliant work that you do. And thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you so much.
And it is now time to stop by the Surrealism Corner. I do love the Surrealism Corner. I'm thinking of taking up permanent residence in the Surrealism Corner because that's where my life seems to be tending. This item, I wish for once that this were television so I could show you the visual, but I think probably if you go online to Google and you Google the Israeli daily newspaper Haaretz, Haaretz, and the words protecting the eyes, you will pull up an illustration of this. The point is that thousands of Ultra-Orthodox Jewish men in Israel have started covering their faces with black veils to avoid looking at indecently clad women, according to news reports in Haaretz. In the past couple of days, thousands of fundamentalist Jews launched this campaign under the title Protecting the Eyes. They launched it in a synagogue at the city of Bnei Brak, east of Tel Aviv, so Haaretz reported. And the photo is of a group of fundamentalist Orthodox men in an airport. They're all wearing the long black coats and the black hats, and they're pushing the airport, wheelies that you put your baggage on, the carts. And they have under their hats, they're wearing black veils that look like sort of overgrown handkerchiefs, reaching down to the middle of their chests, and their hats are over the veils. They're wearing the hats on top of the veils so that they look like some kind of creature invented by Maurice Sendak. So my first thought was to roll on the floor and clutch my ribs because it was so absolutely absurdist. And then my second thought was, my God, how much they fear us and hate us, fundamentalists of all stripes. And then my third thought was, well, I'll say this for this group. At least they're veiling their own faces, not insisting that women do. And that's the Surrealism Corner. Could I make such a thing up? I don't think so. It's time for another quick break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. And when I return, I'll be with Elizabeth Sackler, a returnee to the program, who is active in reclamation of Native American objects which have been taken as art, and in feminist art. And she returns now as the chair of the Brooklyn Museum Board of Trustees.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back. Elizabeth A. Sackler. Well, philanthropist, feminist activist, the founder of the first collection of not just women's art, but feminist art at the Brooklyn Museum, activist in terms of reclamation of Native American sacred objects, and so many more things, and now the chair of the board. Liz, welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program.
Thank you very much, Robin. It's a delight to chat with you today.
Well, I have to start with great hosannas and congratulations. Let flags fly on all the buildings. You are the first woman chair of the board of the Brooklyn Museum, which is one of the great museums of this country and the world. Congratulations, Elizabeth.
Well, thank you very much. It's really something in 190 years to finally have that moment. It's terrific. It's been wonderful. It's very exciting. I'm very proud. And it's a fabulous museum.
It is. It is a great museum. In fact, I think that you probably are the first or among the first chairs of the board of any first-rate, first-class major museum in the country. Am I wrong?
Well, actually, it's true, absolutely true in New York. There are other women chairs across the country, but not in an institution the size of Brooklyn Museum. It's true.
There you go. Wow. Well, and
yeah.
And one of ours, a feminist who, in fact, established the feminist wing. My God, using the F word and convinced the Brooklyn to do that. Must have convinced them right then and there that you could persuade anybody to do anything.
Well, the Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art, we call it the Sackler Center for Feminist Art, opened in 2007.
Yes.
And so we're going into our seventh year, we are in our seventh year, and we have been so successful that I think it's part of the reason that the board of the Brooklyn and the Brooklyn Museum staff is so delighted, really, at this point, to have me head up the board of directors, of trustees. The Sackler Center right now accounts for 1/3, Robin, 1/3 of the visitorship to the Brooklyn Museum. And those are museums.
Wow.
Yeah, so, as I say to everybody, people are hungry for women's voices, for women's issues, to hear a women's see a women's lens on life. And the Sackler Center has led in that effort and provided it and has proven its success.
Any of you listeners out there who have not yet been to the Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum, if you live in the area, get yourself over there fast. If you're planning a visit, make it a paramount stop in your visit. It is the home, among other things, for Judy Chicago's great The Dinner Party. But that's not all it is. It also has a website that is featuring hundreds of hours of public programming. Talk a little bit about that, Elizabeth.
That's correct. Yeah, part of the Sackler Center, in addition to our 26 exhibitions that we've had, is our progressive programming, and it is progressive. We do all things women. We've had over 200 programs. If you go on to www.brooklynmuseum.org/EASCFA/videos, you will be able to pull up all of the programming that we've had over the last 7 years. I'm particularly proud, I think you know, Robin, of our latest series, which we began last spring, and I will do until we don't need to do it anymore.
States of Denial.
States of Denial.
Yes.
States of Denial, the illegal incarceration of women, children, and people of color. And it is timely, and it is something that really, once you know what is going on, you cannot sit still and not do something about it.
That's absolutely true. It is searing.
We have a major human rights crisis in this country, and people are really not aware of it.
Yeah. Well, they can't ever be unaware of it after viewing this video. So I'm going to say it again. It's www.brooklynmuseum.org. That's the easy part. Now, grab your pencils. /EASCFA. Think of it this way. It stands for Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art. EASCFA/video. And tell people about it, because it will open up an issue that you think you maybe thought you knew about, but not really at all. It's just staggering. States of Denial, the illegal incarceration of women, children, and people of color. You have a genius, Liz, for how to put this, for using art in all of its incredible power that goes under the radar, direct to the heart, that circumvents rhetoric and all the words that end in ISM, and yet connecting it with activism in terms of women, in ways that educate and inspire toward action, and also, since this is our Thanksgiving show, in terms of Native American communities and all the work that you've done with Native art and artifacts. Talk a little bit about that.
Oh, thank you, Robin. When you talk about activism, I grew up in New York City. I grew up in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement, and we were all on the street. There was a lot of protesting going on, and activism was part and parcel of the way in which I grew up, the school that I went to, the parents that I had. And as I grew up and began to see the world around me, because I hadn't experienced sexism at home or at school, and began to see what was going on in the big wide world, and then as the 90s hit, the Native American Graves Repatriation Act, which is also the acronym NAGPRA, was passed in 1991. And NAGPRA requires federally funded institutions to return certain of its materials, that has to fall into 4 particular categories, back to nations or tribes of origin. Mm-hmm. And in 1991, there was a sale. It was actually came up. Actually, it was passed in November of 1990, and then the sale at Sotheby's was in 91. And there were 3 masks that the Hopi and Navajo had said are not art. They need to come home. Please take them off the block. And Sotheby's did not do that. And it was a rather long story, but I did go. I did purchase to return them, and in fact did return them. And in so doing, came to know and understand more about American Indian history in our country, the conquest of this country, and the fact that the first peoples of our country and of this hemisphere did not have a voice. And with that, I began the American Indian Ritual Object Repatriation Foundation in 1992 and worked as an advocate for American Indian nations for a decade. And the first part of that work really had to do with NAGPRA because at that time there were 354 recognized American Indian nations recognized by the BIA. Now there are over 500. But at the time, there were no repatriation offices within the tribes and nations. And at the museum side of it, the museums didn't really understand or know about NAGPRA or what it meant. So our very early work had to do with introducing museums to representatives from tribes from whence their collections came. And also we put out something called Mending the Circle, and we do have a website, repatriationfoundation.org, and on the website we have the history of repatriation, and we published, of course, at that time there was no uploading and downloading, so
Yes.
it was publishing and mail handling, something called Mending the Circle, and Mending the Circle really took the law of NAGPRA and really put it into English. And I did many, I was traveling on the road a lot and speaking both at museums and also at nations about what the meaning of the law was and how it was going to function. At this point, in 2014, every nation has a repatriation office and officers.
Wow.
And all museums understand what NAGPRA is and participate actively with representatives from the nation.
My God, you should be very proud because you really started from the grass right up.
Well, I will tell you, Robin, it's not so much pride. I feel very blessed. It was as if the path, in a native way, a path was put before me, and I saw it, and I walked it, and I had the gift. I was given the gift, really, of meeting Native peoples across the country who really opened my eyes not only to the horror of the conquest and what these peoples have been through, but also to the beauty of ceremony, the beauty of spirituality, and it really changed my life.
We can't, any of us, wait to see what you will do as chair of the board of trustees of the Brooklyn Museum, first woman.
Well, thank you. I have one little piece of information, which will be the first time it's out there.
Yes, tell.
If I can. We have a Sackler Center First Award, which I think you may be aware of. We have honored, in 2012, we honored 14 women, including Sandra Day O'Connor, women who were first in their fields.
Yes.
Lucy Lepard, Wilma Mankiller, Toni Morrison, and so on. And we've also honored Julie Taymor. Last year we honored Anita Hill.
Mm-hmm.
And this June we are honoring Miss Piggy. And Kermit is coming. It is the first award that Miss Piggy has received for all the work she has done and all of her energy to energize children and young girls around the world. She has not gotten a star on the boulevard the way Kermit has, And so she is going to be getting her first award, and she will be in conversation with Gloria Steinem.
Oh,
so
now
I hope you'll join us. It's June 4th.
That's nothing if not truly creative. Bless you, Elizabeth Sackler, for everything that you do. And thank you so much for coming back and talking with us. And you have to do it many more times on Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you, Robin. I'd be delighted.
Time for one last break here at Women's Media Center Live, where I am still same old Robin Morgan. Yep. And when we come back, we will come back with some fighting words. So stay tuned.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
And we're back again, ready for some fighting words. So, Thanksgiving. And usually at Thanksgiving, this program highlights the native peoples of this country as opposed to the European conquerors. We always get this impression of a few sparse Indians scattered hither and yon while the Europeans descended. So it's interesting, I think, to notice some of the facts. The population in Europe in 1492 was approximately 60 million. The population in the Americas in 1492, pre-conquest, although it is disputed, ranges from 40 million to 112 million. Most scholars think it is likely that the population of the New World was far greater than that of Europe. One scholar has called this the greatest demographic disaster in the history of the world because, in any event, the native population had declined to less than 6 million by the year 1650. Now, Jefferson and Madison both acknowledged that they had been influenced by the Iroquois Confederacy Constitution in the writing of the Declaration of Independence and of the Constitution of the United States. So I thought it might be interesting to take a look at it again and share some excerpts. The Constitution of the Iroquois Confederacy is based on the Great Peace, because the Iroquois had been warring, the Mohawk and the Seneca particularly, along the eastern coast and along the southern rim of what is now Canada for some years, and they established the Great Peace. It was formed around the council fire of the Confederacy of the Five Nations, Mohawk, Seneca, Onondaga, and the younger nations, Cayuga and Oneida. And here are some excerpts which I think are quite revealing. Clearly, it was a patriarchy. There's no good sentimentalizing it, but it was a patriarchy that was matrilineal, which changes the balance of power. The right of bestowing the title of Lord itself is hereditary in the family of the females. It says the females of the family have the proprietary right to the lordship title for all time. If any Confederate lord neglects or refuses to attend the Confederate Council, the women holding the title shall immediately select another candidate for the title. Do not cross the mothers. If at any time it shall be manifest that a Confederate lord has not in mind the welfare of the people or disobeys the rules of the great law or the great peace, the women of the Confederacy shall come to the council and upbraid the erring lord. The war chief shall then divest the erring lord of his title by order of the women in whom the title is vested, and the women will then select another of their sons as the candidate. In the Let's Not Be Overly Sentimental about Native Peoples Department, another clause reads, certain physical defects in a Confederate lord make him ineligible to sit in the council, and these include idiocy, blindness, deafness, dumbness, and impotence. So they didn't have a very high disability rights consciousness. Here's one that unfortunately Jefferson and Madison did not follow. The lineal descent of the people of the 5 nations shall run always in the female line. Women are the progenitors of the nation. They shall own the land and the soil. Men and women shall follow the status of the mother. Now that's matrilineal, not matriarchal. You can't have everything, although I don't see why not. The great binding law, which every 5 years would be renewed by another sort of conclave, contained some of these elements. The laws of adoption, which were quite complex. So Pocahontas adopting her friend, the European, was not an unusual circumstance at all. People adopted across tribes, clans, etc. The laws of emigration, if somebody left the territory. The rights of foreign nations, which I think is very interesting, by which, of course, they meant foreign indigenous nations. And all of these were temporary rights, not adoption and emigration, but the rights of foreign nations were temporary. The rights and powers of law and the war chief's status. And interesting clauses about how the minute hostilities cease, take back and put away all the weaponry. We could use some of that today. Treason or secession of a nation. And then here we have the rights of the people of the 5 nations. The men of every clan of the 5 nations shall have a council fire ever burning in readiness for a council of the clan. When it seems necessary for a council to be held to discuss the welfare of the clans, then the men may gather about the fire. This council shall have the same rights as the council of women. But interesting, we're used to it being the other way around. The women of every clan of the 5 nations shall have a council fire ever burning in readiness for a council of the clan. When in their opinion it seems necessary for the interest of the people, they shall hold a council, and their decisions and recommendations shall be introduced before the council of the lords by the war chief for consideration. And here we have another myth breaker. Remember how we were always taught the Pilgrims initiated Thanksgiving? Well, listen to this. There's even a section about the rites and festivals of each nation remaining undisturbed. The recognized festivals being, and this is in the Iroquois Constitution, the recognized festivals of Thanksgiving being the Midwinter Thanksgiving, the Maple or Sugar-Making Thanksgiving, the Raspberry Thanksgiving, the Strawberry Thanksgiving, the Corn Planting Thanksgiving, the Corn Hoeing Thanksgiving, the Little Festival of Green Corn, oh, that's a sweetheart, the Great Festival of Ripe Corn, and the Complete Thanksgiving for the Harvest. Take that, Pilgrims. Now we know who introduced whom to what. And there's also in the Constitution songs for protection of a house, for the installation of a lord, and for funeral addresses, including for a chief woman and also for a woman of the people. So there clearly are class differences going down as well. But both are substantially identical to that of a funeral address for a lord. They were human and imperfect, the Iroquois Confederacy, and they shouldn't be romanticized. It insults their complexity. But they clearly had elements of a democracy that were unfamiliar to the Europeans, and Jefferson and Madison picked up on that, including the participation of women, which unfortunately they did not emulate, and the participation of ordinary men, which they did emulate. There's a section of the Iroquois Constitution I didn't have time to read about ordinary clansmen, if they were wise and good enough, could aspire to becoming pine tree chiefs and sit with the great lords in deliberation. In all, the Constitution of the 5-Nation Confederacy had a great influence on that of our country. Maybe not enough. And that's it for today. As the steady march of my books continues into the digital world as ebooks, I'm very pleased indeed to announce the digital version in all formats for Kindle and iPad, etc., and at all online booksellers of my memoir, Saturday's Child. Possibly the most intimate, vulnerable book I've ever written, certainly in prose, outside of poems. As for Women's Media Center Live, we are taking the next week off to breathe. But join us the following week when our guests will, no, let it be a surprise. But you can bet they'll be deeply interesting. Remember to visit us at WMCLive.com for the archives of all our previous episodes. And why not treat yourself to a browse through the archives and a listen to one of those episodes while we take a short break. Also, be sure to find WMC Live on Facebook, Twitter, and at iTunes worldwide, where you can stream, download, and subscribe to the show's podcast. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Opinions expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and Executive Producer of this program, Julie Burton. Senior Producer, Crystal Williams-Chancellor. And our founding sponsor, Regina K. Scully. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thanks for being with us. Don't forget to meet us right back here on Women's Media Center Live.
For the smartest talk about news, politics, sex, books, religion, race, and more, tune your radio to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan. Audacious, witty, provocative, informative, and fun. It's Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on WMCLive.com. Talk radio with a brain.